I'm going to make an attempt at this, knowing full well that many of you will not really take me seriously, but to the extent that we can, try to focus on the budget. Obviously, in some instances, there are questions that are not directly related, but they're still pertinent to how departments will operate. And to the extent that everyone can be respectful of others, if you have lots of questions, my preference is for us to break them up, for you to ask some, we'll go on to someone else, and then obviously I will come back to you later rather than monopolize a large chunk of time. And as always, as council members wish to propose changes in the mayor's budget, which we historically have called a wish list, if you will specify that, Ms. Waller will take that information down, and then there'll be appropriate paperwork to fill out after the fact, so that we have all of that collected, so that our committee can consider all of that collectively at the end. It seemed appropriate to me, before we begin with Mr. Cardwell, to call on the finance director to try to address with an overview of how his department is reconfigured internal service fees. Obviously, they appear in everyone's budget and as a reduction in everyone's budget. And I may ask him to do this again when we have a larger audience, because I think it may help us understand these budgets better. Mr. Riebling, the floor is yours for a moment.
Thank you, Chairman, and members of the committee. Just very quickly, as you go through the budget book, and many of you may have already have taken a look at it, you'll see some changes in internal service fees this year. Specifically, BOSS, which is the Build Facilities Management, and Postal Services are removed as an internal service fee. So those costs are no longer shown up in departmental budgets as an internal service fee, but rather are in the general services budget as a whole. Big picture, it's budget neutral. It doesn't the money just got shifted to the general fund from an internal service fee. And so when you look in the internal service fee section, you'll see a lot of zeros and you see a lot of negative numbers, and it sort of says, well, why do we do that? Well, that's because those areas are no longer considered an internal service fee. So that leaves only what? Fleet, really fleet and radio and EBID are really the only, and ITS are the remaining internal service fees going forward. We have steadily reduced them over the last 6-7 years, and we will look to do some more perhaps in our final budget next year to further reduce it. But our goal would be to get it to eliminate all of them except perhaps ITS. But it stands out. If you have any specific questions about that or how we did it, talk to me offline or some other time, or talk to Talia, which would probably get you a better answer than talking to me, a more complete answer. But Chairman Stein did want me to just sort of overview that, so you saw that, and it didn't look like there was all these reductions in the budget, and then you saw a bigger number for the general services budget going forward. So,
Councilman for Mr. Riebling or Councilman Tiger?
And Rich, I commend you on this. As you know, it's been very confusing for many, many years. Why not do all of them at once, and why do them in a graduated step?
It's complicated, and it takes time and effort to do it. Fleet is very complicated. We looked at doing potentially fleet, and we're going to look at that over the next few months, once we get through this budget, to see if we're ready to take fleet that way for the next fiscal year. It's just complicated. Okay. And then let me say, I don't want to speak for Keith Durbin, but he's here. But Keith feels very strongly that he wants to remain an internal service fee and function. And I mean, I think that's a question you may want to ask him during the budget hearings. But he feels very strongly about that. And and I'm inclined to. We've got enough fish to fry, and we'll probably keep it that way. But we will look at seeing if it's possible to move fleet next year.
So you said cost neutral. There's no inflationary figures for building services or what?
Well, the only increase would be normal. Yeah, normal. It's not dollar for dollar savings, but like they have new facilities online this year, so you see the general services numbers go up from where they would have been if you added all of that last year to the baseline. So there is an increase in the general services budget above just shifting the internal service fees over there, but that's because of just cost of energy and cost of new and the operating cost of new facilities online this year.
And are those figures available to us?
Sure.
As to how much is energy, how much of it is
Yeah.
Janitorial, how much of it is
Sure.
this? That might be helpful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We begin today with our distinguished trustee, Charlie Cardwell. Charlie, will you introduce your longtime deputy and begin by answering the question, can you operate within the mayor's proposed budget?
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. I have with me today Pat Alexander Greer, who has been with me since I took office in 1993. Pat is the Deputy Trustee for Administration. The question is, can I live within my budget that has been given to me? Yes, I can.
And you're welcome to make any other remarks about your office that you wish.
What I would like to do is speak a few minutes on the tax relief program. And I want to first thank Mayor Carl Dean, Finance Director Rich Riebling, and the Metropolitan Council for supporting this program. We have 7,196 participants in Davidson County on the tax relief program. For the year 13, we will spend roughly $3.2 million for the local match for that program. The state will spend roughly $1,700,000. So we are touching a lot of people in this community whose average income is roughly $15,000 a year. If you live in the urban services of Davidson County and you are participating in the program, you receive a credit of $846 toward your tax statement. If you live in the general services area, you will receive a credit of $735. Also, that program, we have the veterans that are participating. We have 277 disabled veterans, and we have 84 widows of disabled veterans that we serve. The tax relief income is $27,800. Also, we have the tax freeze program, which your income cannot exceed $39,680. That program has been one of the best programs that I have seen for the taxpayers and the elderly since I've been a part of the metropolitan government. And I hope that in the future, we will be able to continue to support that program. A couple of other comments I would like to make based on what we're doing in the trustee's office. 2 years ago, we started having the First Tennessee Bank be able to collect property taxes for the trustee's office if a taxpayer wanted to go to the bank. For 13, we had 4,000 taxpayers that went to a First Tennessee Bank in Davidson County with a collection of $9,937,000. Emails now with property statements, we have 7,975 taxpayers that we are emailing their tax statement. As I mentioned earlier, under the tax freeze participation, there are 7,263 taxpayers. So with the tax freeze and the tax relief, we are serving the people that need the serving most in Davidson County. This year, the tax aggregate was $840 million. And we've basically collected 95% of that tax aggregate. The taxpayers in Davidson County, I feel, get a good value for the monies that they pay into the trustee's office and into metropolitan government. And here again, I thank the administration for all of their support for the trustee's office. Mr. Chairman, that is my comments. I'll be glad to respond to any questions that anyone might have.
Thank you very much. Councilman Taggart.
Thank you, Charlie. And first, I want to commend you and your staff. The times I've been up there, the service has been impeccable and very user-friendly. So you and Pat are to be commended. Talk to me about the email system. How are we getting the word out and trying to encourage more folks to use that system? And I think I asked this question last year, is there any method that you and Mr. Durbin and the other departments can share a common database so that Water and you and all these other folks don't have to compile their own databases of emails?
But basically what we're doing now, when we send out a tax statement, we put on the statement, if you would like in the future to have your tax statement emailed, then they have to call and tell us that's what they want to do and give us their email. Now, as far as emails throughout the county, we have not made any effort with Mr. Durbin to maybe capture that information.
Put that on your list to think about. I just hate duplication of services and whatnot. All right, you touched upon the 95% collection rate. Let's revisit what happened in previous administration and councils about delinquent property taxes and the costs that we have, and do you have a personal opinion about how delinquent property taxes should be handled?
I think they're being handled well. The legal department, as you know, we turn over the taxes, once they are delinquent. After 1 year, we turn them over to the legal department and then to Chancery Court. And legal and Chancery are having sales. I noticed this coming year, there's 5 or 6 sales almost monthly with the delinquent taxes that have not been paid. So there is a great effort with the legal department and the Chancery Court to make that happen.
Where is the sale of the delinquent property taxes at a discount? Where does that come into this picture?
Basically, what happens, we have, in this year, I think there's roughly $25 million that will be sold. And that will be sold probably about the 1st of June of this year. Now, that's part of the delinquent taxes that have not been collected. Now, we actually go through the process of collecting those taxes. The money we've received up front for that receivable, we forward that on to the person who bought the receivable come June.
So what is the amount that we receive, the discounted amount we receive up front on that $25 million roughly?
I do not have that amount. The bid has just been let, and I'm not sure what the premium may have been this year. Rich may know.
So we're paying 7% for collection fee. Do what?
No, we're getting
7%.
Mr. Reed, when you use your microphone.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
They're paying us a premium of 7%, and then they're receiving the collections as they are collected, whenever they're collected. Obviously with penalty and interest on top of that.
Is that where they get their money from, is the penalty and interest?
It's purely a factoring thing where they determine when people are going to pay, and it's turned out, as much as we've talked about it over the last several years, to not do it would create a major deficit in your budget 1 year.
1 year, sure.
And we had, I think, 6 or 7 bidders this year, so there is even more interest in it than we've ever had before, and it's the highest premium we've ever received.
Are those rates that the premium that the delinquent taxpayer pays, are those set by statute?
Yes, sir.
So there's no gouging?
No gouging, there's nobody, they don't do any of the enforcement of it or anything. Everything's done just like it always would. It simply is, as the money's paid into Mr. Cardwell, then it's basically sent on to the company.
Now, that would, in theory, would be money that this government would be receiving if we had not
That's correct.
done
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
that first year, that one time.
That is correct.
These are private companies, so we don't have a feel for what their return on investment is.
I don't think we have any knowledge of that. That's
That'd
correct.
be very interesting. Is there any way to estimate that, or other municipalities that may be with companies that publish that information?
I think we could probably do some we could probably come up with a number with some calculation.
Well, Talia could do that in her spare time then.
We'll task her with that.
Thank you.
Councilman Claiborne.
Thank you. Charlie asked a couple of the questions I was going to ask. Just one other. When a property goes through the process and legal gets to the place where it's sold, how much of that income, what percentage do you actually get against what the tax bill was? Do you have any idea?
Basically, if it's sold, we recover, hopefully, we do recover the amount of taxes owed. The fees and costs that are involved in that is distributed at the clerk and master's office. So we do not receive any of those fees. That's done by the clerk and master's office.
Okay, so you get the full amount if it's sold and...
That's right.
Okay, all right.
Mr. Cardwell, thank you. Thank you for your good work, and thank you for being with us.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Rooker, come on down.